if Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do that.
Consider this your trigger warning. The following program is strictly satire and is not meant to be taken seriously. So don't get all butthurt, you liberal snowflakes, just because we skewer your sacred cows and expose all your lies and hypocrisy. Truth hurts, and so does satire. So grab a drink, pull up a chair, and enjoy the show.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Prepared Mind channel, running from job to job, crisis to crisis, prepared thought after prepared thought. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to the show. We got a lot of crazy stuff going on today, right? It's Torrid Tuesday. Got a lot of stuff to discuss, and you are also part of the show. Everyone who's come to the preparedmind.club, who's come to subscribestar.com to join us here to talk about it. This is your opportunity to get your questions in. So do that. Get your questions in, and I'm going to start with my big stories of the day. World War III, I wanted to use that Mr. T intro piece there just to show, again, how bumbling Biden is. How none of it's his fault. How everything is someone else's fault, right? It's unbelievable. The Nord Stream pipeline, oh yeah, no problem. Woo! World War III. So we had an escalation on that today. And it's something to keep, once again, a close eye on, because it's just another piece of what's going on out there. A Russian Su-27 supposedly, reportedly attacked a U.S. drone, one of the Reaper drones. And this happened over the Black Sea, which is the sea just south of Crimea and just south of Russia. Giant inland sea. Now, apparently, supposedly, the Russian jet dumped fuel on the drone. How's that possible? Then it forced a crash after colliding, breaking, the drone's propeller. That's how it forced it to crash. Now, I have a couple of questions to ask here, a couple of thoughts. But first, let me share with you a little bit of history. In the 1960s, North Vietnam, with the help of China, reportedly, allegedly, supposedly attacked the USS Military, right? A naval ship, and it was called the Gulf of Tonkin incident. Now, 40 plus years later, the former Secretary of Defense, Robert McNamara, admitted that that was a lie 40 years later. But that action, or that lie, was used as the excuse to ramp up military activity against Vietnam to increase the war effort. And that was it, folks. So let's go back to what supposedly happened today. The military, or the Pentagon, claims that a Russian plane dumped fuel on the drone. Okay, does the drone have fuel sensing sensors? How does the drone know that fuel fell on it? Was it rainwater? Right? Does it have a sniffer on there? Does it take a little sample of anything that touches it and scoop it and bring it inside and test it in a chemical analyzer? How the hell do they know that? And then we're to believe that it was forced to crash because it collided with the Su-27, which broke the propeller. It's very interesting stuff, folks. So Russia took out a drone. How about this? Show us the footage. Maybe we could see the dumped fuel. Maybe we could see the Russian Su-27, run into it. I'd like to see that. Non-CGI, non-computer created footage, please. real camera footage. If they can detect fuel, surely they can give us some footage showing how this happened. I mean, why should we trust Biden and his Pentagon at this time and date, right? After what happened with Vietnam, after what happened with the 2020 incident, after Jim Jones juice, after the cerveza bug lockdowns, why should we trust Biden, the Pentagon, or the government in any fashion at all, right? The Pentagon itself withheld information from Trump, so what makes us believe that they wouldn't withhold information from us or just lie to us outright? By the way, they're destroying our military by giving our bullets and our bombs to Ukraine and taking our money and paying for transgender surgery for those in uniform. Is this an escalation? Well, sure, it's an escalation. How far will it go? Well, we've got some more information on this, right? I want to cover it. I want to cover this. Is this the best way to go out, right? The White House did not send in Karine Jean-Pierre to talk about military action with this Russian plane and this American drone. Instead, they send out spokesmouth John Kirby, who offered a saltine cracker in value of response. He says that the State Department is going to, quote, will reach out and expressly and directly make our concerns known. So, I mean, what could the concerns of the White House be? Did they call him up and say, attention, Putin, this is Biden's White House. We want you to expressly and directly know this. We just pulled a false flag, so watch your asses. I mean, he didn't tell us what he's going to tell Putin and the Kremlin. He just says, yeah, we're going to make our concerns known. Attention, Kremlin. We just faked an incident, and we could actually declare war and come after you directly. Better watch your backs, Kremlin. I mean, that sounds pretty express, and that sounds pretty direct. How come they don't tell us what they actually said? They just say, ooh, we did some bad stuff. We use some big fancy words on these guys. I don't buy anything they say. Everything is a lie now. Remember how I started the show with the Biden Nord Stream? Oh, it's Germany. Don't worry. Everyone's going to understand, as he mumbled his way through a press conference. Unbelievable what they're doing. Federal government, folks, is full of nincompoops and incompetence. Literally full of nincompoops and incompetence. All right. Mr. Skylight is sending me good stuff. Wow. Very, very good, man. Let us continue. Let us just keep marching through this swamp of SHTF. Well, the federal government, yes, they are incompetent. How about this? The Department of Justice and the Securities and Exchange Commission, two of Biden's best pit bulls out there. Well, they're investigating the Silicon Valley Bank collapse. Oh, really? Well, we're waiting, right? What are they going to do? They're investigating what? Isn't this already known? Haven't we already talked about it and explained what happened? It got explained to us. Silicon Valley Bank. They don't have a risk officer in place. So the woke, diversified, inclusive committee that runs that department just invested wherever the fuck they wanted. Let's see. How about this? The Federal Reserve keeps raising interest rates, making money more expensive to buy, and, well, making the bonds that they issued less valuable. What a mess, folks. It is just, it's torrential. When it rains, it pours. I did listen to a lot of information today on my lunch regarding the banking collapse, the banking situation, the banking risk, how systemic it is. I'm no financial advisor. I'm no expert. And you know how the experts, well, yeah, the experts are the one running the banks that are failing. The experts are the ones running the monetary system that's failing. The experts, folks, are out there. They're out there. They're in charge, and look what they're doing. So, I mean, how could I possibly even compete with that? I'm not utterly bankrupt by billions or even millions of dollars, right? I managed to keep my head above water and run a tight ship. They can't. Well, they're the experts, so don't listen to me. Unbelievable. The information I heard said, well, you don't necessarily have to go take your money out of the bank, but only leave in the bank that much money which you are willing to lose, right? So the amount of money I have in the bank, I'm willing to lose because I need to pay my bills on a month-to-month basis. They take all my money. I'm just going to say, hey, you want my money? You go get it back from the bank that stole it from me. The bank that used woke policy to invest and then squandered it. Now get this, folks. The concern, is it over big banks or is it over little banks? Well, the little banks work with the big banks to protect their assets. Imagine that a little bank says, we don't really have enough to really do much, so we're going to give our money to Chase, or we're going to give our money to JP Morgan or Wells Fargo or Bank of America. So they give their money to Bank of America or some other big lending institution to hold for them, right? Big banks have trouble, they take the little banks with them. When the little banks have trouble, the big banks just let go of the rope and let them sink. Now, I've got more information on the FDIC bailout of Silicon Valley Bank and also Signature Bank. Folks, these were massive. I think the second and third largest bank failures in American history. I think the first biggest is still Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers. Any way you look at it, incredible destruction, incredible loss. But, you know, let's just blow it off. No big deal, folks. They did not have FDIC insurance in place for these accounts. So guess what the FDIC does? They say, we'll use other people's insurance money, your insurance money, to cover these banks, which weren't investing in insurance to cover their losses, to protect themselves as required, right, by their own charters. If they want to put that FDIC sticker up on their little window, they have to buy the insurance. Apparently, they didn't do it. FDIC covered it anyway because they are so frightened. The Federal Reserve, the Treasury, the federal government, the president, they're all frightened of the damage that can be caused by people pulling their money out. Bank runs. They're scared to death because their system is that fragile. Now, I don't go from month to month worrying about everything. I'm not fragile. These people, they make one error. They make one goof up at this point, and their whole world falls apart. Don't wait for the DOJ. Don't wait for the Securities and Exchange Commission to do anything, folks. They're not going to. Oh, they'll investigate, but don't expect anything to be fixed. Know why? Because the one thing that could correct all of the bad gambles, all of the high risk, all of the insanity in Wall Street would be to let these banks fail and have their principals, their lenders, suffer. Nope, they don't want to do that. They don't want to let that happen. They want to make sure everybody can take all the risk they want and you back it up. So let's just imagine FDIC had $200 billion in their account, or was it 250? They didn't have much overall. And down goes Silicon Valley Bank. Pow! So the government directs FDIC to cover their losses. What about the rest of us? Does the rest of the country now give up, forego their FDIC coverage? Because everything that was in that very small, very limited account is now gone. They just cleaned it out. Oh yeah, by the way, Governor Newsom, governor of California, he was begging for a bailout. He has dubious connections to Silicon Valley Bank. Look it up. Look it up. These people, folks, are crooked to the core. They're about protecting themselves. It is awful. Now, I would like you to do this. Please get your questions down below. I'm going to jump on something that is huge. Once again, World War III. Tucker Carlson of Fox News. He asked, Pence, Trump, and DeSantis, as well as others, these are presidential hopefuls, right, about Ukraine. I'm not even going to read to you what Pence had to say, but I want you to think about the stark difference between what is happening now and what these guys have to say, right? We know, you and I, we know warmongers want war, even when it isn't a national interest item. Is putting NATO bases in Ukraine vital to our national security in the United States? Are biolabs working on deadly biological weapons even legal, much less important and important enough for us to fight a war so we can continue doing that in Ukraine? Who benefits from the Ukraine war, folks? Who pays for that war? Is America better off because of the war? Is it more respected? Are we better prepared militarily as a result of this war? Or are we worse off, more taxed? Are we less respected in the world because of what Biden is doing? Is our military in greater peril and incompetent and unable to protect us as a result of giving our bullets and our bombs to Ukraine to use on the Russians? So let me give you Trump and his response. It's going to take a little bit, but I would like you to listen to it because I want to show the difference between what Trump is saying and Governor DeSantis down in the great state of Florida versus the military mouthpieces, the Washington talking heads, the Democrats, including the president, and their attitude towards we must go to war at all costs. We must pay for this war at all costs. It's worth supporting this war just because it's Ukraine and Russia's bad. So let's look at this. Trump says, quote, like inflation and numerous other self-inflicted wounds and mistakes made over the past 2 years, Russia would definitely not have raided or attacked Ukraine if I was your president. Do you believe that? I actually do. Trump continues, in fact, for 4 years, they didn't attack, which is why I actually said that, nor did they have any intention of doing so as long as I was in charge. But the sad fact is that due to a new lack of respect for the U.S. caused at least partially by our incompetently handled pullout from Afghanistan and a very poor choice of words by Biden in explaining U.S. requests and intentions, the bloody and expensive assault began and continues to this day. That is all history, but how does it end? And it must end now. Start by telling Europe they must pay at least equal to what the U.S. is paying to help Ukraine. Now, last night I said, hey, if we put out $110 billion, how much has Europe put out? It's a great question, right? And how much of that does Zelensky own? So let us continue with Trump's talk. He said they also must pay us, or they must also pay us, speaking of Europe. Retroactively, the difference at a staggering $125 billion, that's his number. We are paying 4 to 5 times more. And this fight is far more important for Europe than it is for the U.S. Next, this is how he would handle this. Trump, next tell Ukraine that there will be little more money coming from us unless Russia continues to prosecute the war. The president must meet with each side, then both sides together, and quickly work out a deal. This can be easily done if conducted by the right president. Both sides are weary and ready to make a deal. I do not believe, folks, that Trump is accurate here. I do not believe that Putin is weary, but I do believe he's ready to make a deal, and only a deal that falls in line with Russia's interests, not America's interests and not Europe's interests. Right? Trump continues, properly executed this terrible and tragic war, a war that should never have started in the first place, will come to a speedy end. So this question was asked of Trump. Is opposing Russia in Ukraine a vital American national strategic interest? No, but it is for Europe. but not for the United States. That is why Europe should be paying far more than we are. I'm actually not entirely certain that that's a true statement. It may be his opinion, but I don't think it's a true statement. Depends on your perspective and what you're looking at. Is opposing Russia and keeping Ukraine a vital American national strategic interest? Well, not for you and me, but that is only if the DC government represented you and me as Americans. Who are they representing right now? They're representing the military-industrial complex, the bioweapons research complex, the money laundering banking cartels. That's who this war benefits, and that's in whose interest is being fought. The people that want to keep the bioweapons there, that want to keep pushing for more military and NATO bases. Are you kind of getting this? This morning's video is about Trump saying he's going to obliterate the deep state. And I talked about how that cost President Kennedy his head. So let us move on now and take a look at how DeSantis would address and deal with this. Because, folks, believe it or not, the campaign for 2024 is not far away. Unbelievably, time has flown, and here we are dealing with 2 fucking years of Biden's horse shit. As queers and fruitcakes and LGBs and whatever name they choose for themselves, and those are names they choose for themselves, destroy children and their morality. Absolutely destroy it. That's their job, is to destroy morality so they can take over. And they're doing it, folks. We'll cover that in just a few more minutes here. Right? There's a big difference between Trump and DeSantis, and there's a big difference between them. I don't mean the difference between Trump and DeSantis. They're pretty close. We'll cover that. But there's a huge difference between them and the fascist, anti-American scumbags in charge in D.C. Now, DeSantis answered Tucker's question. While the U.S. has many vital national interests, securing our borders, addressing the crisis of readiness within our military, achieving energy security and independence, and checking the economic, cultural, and military power of the Chinese Communist Party, becoming further entangled in a territorial dispute between Ukraine and Russia is not one of them. Okay, the Biden administration's blank check funding of this conflict, quote, as long as it takes, quote, without any defined objectives or accountability, distracts from our nation's most pressing challenges. I think he kind of nailed that, right? It's a blank check. How do we know when we've won the war? Is there any chance of winning it, or we just keep throwing money at it? So let me continue with DeSantis, though. Without question, peace should be the objective. Is peace the objective right now? No, it's not. The objective is to keep fighting Russia at all costs, with all cost of lives, or America's sons and daughters are going to be dragged into the war, says Zelensky. That's not an objective. That's not a goal. That's a threat against us. DeSantis continues, the U.S. should not provide assistance that could require the deployment of American troops or enable Ukraine to engage in offensive operations beyond its borders. And it has done just that. It is bombed, sabotaged in Russian territory and Russian bases. Right. So DeSantis says F-16s and long-range missiles should be off the table. These moves risk explicitly drawing the U.S. into the conflict and drawing us closer to a hot war between the world's two nuclear powers. The risk is unacceptable. It is, it's interesting, the difference between even Trump and DeSantis. So the concept of regime change even in Russia, he addresses. DeSantis does. He says such a policy would neither stop the death and destruction of the war, right? The war would continue if Putin was taken out, nor would it produce a pro-American, Madisonian constitutionalist in the Kremlin. And here he is poking folks poking at Washington, D.C. and poking at the media who don't understand that. Right? And this is what DeSantis continues. History indicates that Putin's successor in this hypothetical regime change would likely be even more ruthless. The cost to achieve such a dubious outcome could become astronomical. In other words, continuing to fight Russia is going to produce more and more anti-Americanism, which takes us further and further from peace. Unbelievable, folks, the difference between what is going on in Washington and what the presidential candidates have to think about and talk about. So that's when we say, you know, what's the difference between Trump and the Democrats? Or what's the difference between Trump and DeSantis? Or what's the difference between DeSantis and the Democrats? I know these are political speeches. I get it. I know that they're campaigning so that they can be elected. I get it. I know that once elected, a lot of politicians become, well, defanged puppets who no longer get to say what they want and do what they want, but rather they start doing as they're told. I get it. But there is a big, big difference. And we need to continue to push these people so that we can fight back internationally and nationally and get our country back. Now, I've got an example, folks, on this Torrid Tuesday of SHTF bullshit. There's a mom who is now begging the woke mob not to hurt her or her children. She was threatened for exposing a very popular trans fruitcake who was sending grooming messages directly at kids. Unbelievable, folks. The mom in danger of this attack highlighted a video of this fruitcake named Marsh, who was addressing his young audience. Quote, your parents screwed up. And then he invites them to go to his Patreon site so they can talk about their problems in privacy. Isn't that interesting? They provide a private place on Patreon for fruitcakes to introduce children to sexual ideas that make no sense in a world of reality. But, you know, Patreon had to kick the prepared mind off there because we're just too fucking radical, because we like freedom and law and order and justice. Good God, what a pile of shit that place has become. So it's interesting that this mother asked this. She says, why do you want to talk to these particular kids, right? She pointed out how Marsh has videos on his Patreon site teaching kids to go no contact with their parents, meaning cutting their parents off, silencing themselves from their parents. And then there's also videos about sex on his website. Go Patreon, way to go. They've gone totally woke, folks. These freaks need to be exposed. More exposure, not less. They need more criticism, not praise. They need more condemnation for their lies and their just absolute abominations. And not, folks, they need less cover for their mental illnesses. Instead of accepting it and promoting it and congratulating them, they need to be condemned for it. They are mentally ill, and they need to be called to the carpet on it. They're not brave. They're freaks, folks. They're absolute freaks, and they know it. And now they threaten mothers for exposing them, kind of like libs of TikTok. We can't have them. Oh, no, that's terrible. Unbelievable, folks. And to end my session, we're going to go into your Q&A from the inner circle. We're going to go there next. But first, we want to stop, and I want to do this. I want you to, this is a really fun one. This is, thank you to Jolene. This is really, really kind of a fun one. Let's take a wild guess. Thank you, Mr. T, for that. Dr. Doom, Fauci, assisted a collapsed woman during a formal dinner in Washington, D.C. That's right, folks. Just a couple chairs down from the good doctor, someone just passed out, collapsed. How many times have we seen that? from sports announcers, TV casters, field reporters, as well as seeing people collapse on sporting events. Some folks get back up, others go to the hospital, and quite a few of them just fucking die on the spot. So it must really be a comfort for Dr. Doom to see the lives he has touched in person. So I want you to do this. Take a wild freaking guess why she passed out. Really? And that's just another edition of the Pfizer Files. Thanks again, Mr. T. Okay, and now we're going to roll on to the Inner Circle. Ask John Live. Whew! Well, I just couldn't get enough of that. I couldn't get enough of that wild guess there, folks. So let's do this. Let's do it again. Let's take another wild guess.
Game over.
If it ain't scotch, it's crap. I'll tell you what, let's take a wild guess. And wild guesses only, because we're not expert. We can't take educated guess. We can't make intelligent thoughts, comments, suggestions. We can't come up with theory other than conspiracy theory because we're just idiots. Well, a United Airlines flight from Guatemala had to be diverted to Houston in mid-flight. They were like, fuck it, we got to land this thing coming up from Guatemala. Well, where it came from isn't as big a deal as what the fuck happened on the plane. Don't think about Guatemala, which I kept going, Guatemala. Why is Guatemala important? It's not. What's important is that the pilot had a medical emergency while flying. How often, folks, did we have to see that, deal with it, put up with it, before the Jim Jones juice and the juice boosters? Wild guesses only. What do you think that pilot suffered from? I have my guess. Do you have yours? All right, Jolene, we've got you in the background, and we've got Heidi, who comes out to the front with a question and kicks off the Inner Circle and says, do you know anything about the newest executive order for anti-Second Amendment? It's supposedly about red flag laws. Well, I'll tell you what, Heidi, they are constantly ramming red flag law bullshit, new ATF rules, folks, not laws, but rules. And what a rule is to the ATF is taking a piece of legislation and interpreting it in their little heads and then going, what we think they mean by that statute is XYZ, bump stock, wrist brace, silencer, ghost gun, whatever they want to apply to the statute. Then they turn it out and they make a rule and go, this rule refers to that statute. Yeah, let's see, the government making up a bunch of bullshit and then passing whatever rules it wants. You see, the ATF, the Department of Justice, the FBI, they don't uphold the law. They don't enforce the law. They enforce rules, their belief systems on us. So the ATF, what do they have now? They've been losing. They lost the ghost gun battle in one court. They lost all kinds of battles over the last several years in the courtroom, right? So that's why they've gone from trying to pass gun control laws. Remember, for years, it was high-capacity magazines and black rifles and the AR-15. Remember how evil the AR-15 is, right? That didn't work. They continue to push this. They continue to push their anti-gun rhetoric like this.
Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore. Hell yes. Hell yes. Hell yes. We're going to take your AR-15. Hell yes. Your AK-47. Hell yes. We're going to take your AR-15.
Oh, hell no!
Hell yes.
Hell no. You see, they know that we can defend ourselves. They know that that's what the Second Amendment is about. So they use social pressure. They use political pressure. They use enforcement pressure on rules. Their attempt has been to deter you from seeking out those things like silencers or full auto weapons, which are perfectly legal if you get the right license. But you see, the AR-15 is not an automatic weapon. It's a semi-automatic weapon, and everyone can get one of those very easily. No special license needed. The Second Amendment is about protecting ourselves against enemies, foreign and, of course, domestic. Both foreign governments and our own government should have become tyrannical. They do not like it at all. What's funny, though, is that who has been doing the shooting as of late? Throughout the Biden administration and throughout the Obama administration, it's left-wing lunatics going after right-wing people, going after churches. This, what it tells me is the answer and the solution to everything is violence. Because the left wing are the ones who are acting violent. They seem to understand the value of it, don't you think? It is the Biden administration who doesn't want to use peace to solve issues, but rather war. And rather than outwit our enemy, the idea with the left wingers is just to give in, as in Afghanistan, and just give up everything and give up more lives and give up more wealth. They make no sense at all, folks, but they do understand violence because the government, all government, understands when they want their way, they will get violent with you. You don't obey a cop, you can go to jail, and if you don't even want to get arrested, you can be shot. Really? I can be shot for failing to obey another human being. I can be thrown in jail the rest of my life for failing to obey another human being. Is that freedom, my friends? Is that liberty? No, that is big, powerful, abusive government. Now, if I've committed a crime, that's something completely different. I've robbed a bank. I've robbed another human. I've assaulted and beaten another human. I've murdered another human. Now I'm a bad guy. Now I'm an outlaw. Now I need to be taken control of by the government because I've demonstrated that I am immoral and dangerous. But basic rules, basic laws, like owning a firearm and not wanting to register it if it's required, then it's not required where I'm at. You can be arrested for whatever they want, folks, and if you don't obey them, if you don't obey the rules like the ATF makes and they make up, then you can go to jail for that. Now, like I said, a family member has let me know in their federal training that the ATF is a bunch of pussies with badges and guns, that they are gutless, that they are weenies and they've got nothing. They talk big, they talk tough, but they're a bunch of, well, wimps. That doesn't mean, folks, that they're not dangerous because they have guns. And they will use them when they feel justified in the government, just as left-wing lunatics will use guns against you, a shopping mall full of unarmed people, a fast food place full of unarmed people, home invasion robbery. They're doing all of these things. They have no problem justifying their use of guns. The same way the actual literal communists that I've dealt with say, Americans shouldn't have guns, but I should. And I go, why? They go, because I can't trust anyone else, but I'm good with them. These people have demonstrated to me that they are the most dangerous, thoughtless fucking idiots I've ever met. Every last one of these communists is a moron, and they have serious mental problems. They have. They've demonstrated it on multiple occasions. And several of them would go to jail if the police knew about what they were doing in the past. Unbelievable, folks. These people are fucked up. All right. Well, it's now your turn to address another topic. Where do we want to go next here on the Prepared Mind channel? And it is David. He says this: we've got chemical spills, trains derailing, China buying up our farmland, banks collapsing, Chinese and Russian submarines off our coasts, false flags galore. Hooray, hurrah, hoorah for Biden. And folks, it's not just Biden. It's his cohorts that pull his strings, like Obama, Soros. Yeah, it's not just Biden, though he is the chief executive. If he were not in charge there at the White House, if Kamala Harris was in charge, guess what? The FBI would still be corrupt under Chris Wray. Ruby Rod and all the other scumbags there would continue to be scumbags. The Department of Justice would still ignore Democrats violating the law. Democrats like Hillary, who kept an unsecured government server with sensitive national American secrets, or rather national government secrets, right, that the Chinese could intercept. So Biden, yeah, he's in charge now. He is the figurehead. He's going to be the fall guy. In 2024, folks, well, unless they've got it securely wrapped up with their special voting machines, they're going to lose. This is not the overconfident Republican speaking. This is just someone saying Biden is unloved by his own fucking party. Unloved. But folks, he was unloved going into the election. He did not campaign. He hid in his basement. He didn't say anything stellar. In fact, he made a complete fool and buffoon of himself when he did come out of his basement, and he still won. Until he does something that the American people demand him to be outed for, he's going to stay in office and continue to make these gruesome anti-American decisions. Now, here's the deal. America has now heard that he has taken Chinese communist money. We got that from a congressman who says he has witnesses, documentation, evidence. Where is Kevin McCarthy, Speaker of the House? Where is he? Why isn't he calling for impeachment with all the evidence that's come out, with all of the additional people who say they've got evidence, proof, all the testimony that's come out, all of the facts, the Hunter Biden laptop full of evidence? Why is not Kevin McCarthy calling for impeachment? Are we waiting for a couple more little videos to come out, or do we have enough? I think we have more than enough. The American people, they should be outraged, but why aren't they? Because the mainstream media doesn't tell them to be outraged. This is their power. This is their control, is by telling us, that's no big deal. Remember Trump, he was 10 times as worse. And then they cite no evidence that Trump was any times worse, much less 10 times. They let it go as if it's no big deal. So people are like, well, they just said that they got witnesses that he's taking Chinese money, but no one seems upset. So the average idiot just wanders off. Who gives a fuck? They're not standing on their principles, so they must not have principles. Let me give you an example, though, folks, of someone standing on their principles. And then I'll give you an example of someone else who is also in the same case standing on their principles. Just last week, there was a Christian school up in Vermont that said, we're not going to play in a tournament against a team that has a trans player, because that is not a girl. That is giving an unfair advantage to their team by having a boy say he's a girl play on their team. Well, this school, folks, stood on their principles and said, we're not playing. And so the people who don't like that, they stood on their principle as well. So this school, this Christian school in Vermont, is now banned from playing against other teams in future sporting events because they stood on their principles and said, we're not going to play with a trans team. So their league that they're in said, well, fine, then you can't engage in any sports because you don't accept our freakish, screwball, anti-intellectual, anti-science stance and belief systems. Political divorce, national divorce. It's coming. It needs to come. We're going to have partisan conflict. You see, it just hasn't been good enough to be tolerant. And then, well, okay, fine, we're accepting of these fruitcakes. Okay, fine, now they have to have their own bathrooms, their safe spaces. Oh, now we have to let them speak, and now they have to be honored. These trans fruitcakes are now replacing women in women's events, women's beauty contests, brave, smart women, women's scholastics, women's academic awards. Where are the feminists who want women protected? See, it was never about protecting women. It was about pushing a political agenda. They're standing on their principles on the left, folks, and that is their principles are destroy America at all costs. So why aren't we standing on our principles? Why not? Where are you on all of this? Are you prepping to action? Prep to action? Do you have food, water, shelter, clothing, medicine, means of self-defense in your plan? Have you taken action by calling, writing, texting, emailing, and even carrier pigeon, sending your messages to DC, to your representatives, to all the representatives for that matter, to the senators who are representing us and telling them enough of this bullshit, enough throwing America's money away to other countries and fighting their wars for them? There's just no explanation, folks, other than these people are trying to destroy this country on purpose. And we, meaning you and I, need to stand on our principles, because those lefties, those screwballs, are standing in quicksand and they're screaming and yelling, it's Mount Everest, and they're at the peak. No, they're fruitcakes. They truly are. All right, Jolene, who do we have next up? We've got Sally Sue, who says, one term with O'Biden feels like a lifetime. Hopefully it's almost over. Will we have a Republican president next, or is it too early to say? We should have had a Republican president back in 2000. We should have had a Republican president back in 1996. We should have had a Republican president in 2008. The reason I think we're having these problems, folks, is the mainstream media, it is the education system, and it is the voting system. They have all of those things for decades been pro-Democrat, 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 and the Democrat Party has been anti-America. So the education system, the mainstream media, and the voting system are anti-American. They are pro-destruction of America. And that is evidenced by where we're at today. That's why it feels like a freaking lifetime, because, Sally Sue, it has been. It just hasn't been all Biden. It hasn't been all Obama. It hasn't been all Clintons. George W. Bush. His dad, George H.W. Bush. I mean, between Reagan all the way till now, there's been one president who has been pro-American, even though he is not a fiscal conservative, Trump. And look how much he was hated. Look how much he was hated. It's incredible, folks, where we're going in this country and what these people are trying to do to us. We should have all Republican presidents, because the people should see the threat and scream to have their Constitution protected and their rights. But what is it that the left does? They scream and yell that Republicans are trying to destroy our democracy. They're trying to take away people's rights to vote. No, they're not. What they want to do is make sure that people who have the right to vote have their vote counted, and that dead people, dogs, don't vote 2, 3, 4, or 5 times. That in fact, dogs and dead people shouldn't be voting at all. And that normal people shouldn't be allowed to vote in every district and just drive from voting booth to voting booth in a city and keep voting. And that people who are counting ballots, they should not be able to pull out Republican ballots and throw them away. And they shouldn't be able to count Democrat ballots 2, 3, 5, 10 times over. You see, the American people know and want freedom and liberty. What they've convinced everybody through the media, through the education system, and through the political lies is that well, people are voting Democrat in huge numbers, right? Joe Biden, 91 million votes for a guy that nobody likes, who did not campaign, who hid in his basement. When he spoke, he made gaffes. He screwed up. He sounded like an idiot, and a racist idiot at that, by the left's own standards. We should have nothing but Republicans. So why are we getting what we're getting? Because there's a serious, serious problem. And we're not at the beginning of it. It is reaching its powerful zenith. It's reaching the top of its curve for control and power. And it will either absolutely grab us and hold us in that strength it has at the top, or it's going to come all the way down and crash when it is exposed and we no longer choose to obey it. Again, obedience. They would threaten that they'll come and take your guns. Hell yes, we'll take your guns. Hell yes, we'll take your AR-15s, says Beto. Oh yeah, who? Well, they'll pick on us one by one, the same way it takes 3 cops now to write a single parking ticket for an unarmed citizen. But if we rose en masse and said no more of this shit, who would stop us? The police, they can't even stand up to a couple hundred Antifa rioters. Imagine thousands and thousands and thousands of patriotic Americans saying, fuck you, we're not doing this. And they had guns in their hands. And the police said, oh yeah, wait till this riot is over. Wait till this is over. We're going to come and get you one at a time. Well, if the people said, no, you don't. And if we formed our own registry, a patriotic registry, and said, you will not arrest this person for participating in this protest. If you come and arrest them, we will come and free them. And we'll do it not just with guns at the ready, but rather guns chambered and pointed in a very dangerous direction. You see, we're not there yet. And that's why we're going to continue to get Democrats elected, and why we're going to continue to see oppressive, lying government that uses threats of force and actual force against the people. Until we're so pissed off and so fed up that we stand up, we're going to continue to be beaten down. And that's a fact. It's a fact that's modern. It's a fact that's ancient. Until people are abused to such an egregious degree that it cannot be ignored in their daily lives, they will tolerate and put up with shit. For everyone on YouTube, everyone on the internet who wants to talk tough, I ain't putting up with that shit. Look how much shit they're putting up with. We need to do something, yet those people don't do anything. This channel is about getting prepared. This channel is about prepping to action. It's about being prepared for the time and the events when people have finally had enough, so that you're ready up here and that you understand the negative consequences, the SHTF actions being taken against us right now to punish us, our food supply, our water supply, our national security, our border security, our military, our schools, our education, our legal system, our political system, our monetary system, our financial system, right? They're all compromised and being destroyed piece by piece, bank by bank, law by law, while the lawless continue to have power and authority in this country, right? It's just a matter of time. Being prepared in the event of a major emergency, a catastrophic emergency, whether it's real or whether it's synthetic, that is a false flag or black swan, if you will. Being prepared for that as we get closer and closer to the day when we all have to stand up and either accept responsibility for ourselves and our country, or just bend over a fence and let some trans person show you what they want to do to you, right? It's not ready yet. It's not that time. We're not in that room yet. And I hate to say, we're going to have to get to that room at some point. We can't vote our way out of this. We've tried it my entire freaking life. You can't talk your way out of it. We've debated with these fucking idiots, and look what they're doing now. There's no threat to children to have trans read books to them. And yeah, it's fine. Drag queens are great. And if you want to go in the military, we'll help you cut off your balls and turn you into something you're not, and then we'll pay for it. Thank you very much. Good God. All right. Are there more questions? Are there more thoughts? Yes. Uman said, Trump did some good stuff, but drain the swamp, hire all swamp creatures. You'd be in jail. Clintons are good people. Take the guns first. And the big one, Operation Warp Speed. There it is. Thank you, Mr. Uman. Yeah, Trump, he tried doing a good job, but put that back up there. But yeah, he tried to drain the swamp. He said he's going to drain the swamp. But then all he did was hire swamp creatures. At the same time, well, I don't want to say all. I'll argue with you here and say, what about Peter Navarro? What about Dr. Atlas? Those two fought, especially Peter Navarro, who was then politically harassed by the Biden administration after they took control and power. Navarro stood up and bitch slapped, euphemistically, Dr. Fauci and shouted him down and made him into the 5'2" troll that he truly is, treated him like it. Now, yeah, beyond that, all Trump did was hire people that screwed him over and screwed us over, because that's all there really is in DC. It's probably 99% anti-American fruitcakes. Now, then, of course, yes, he did say, Hillary Clinton, you'd be in jail. But he also said, this is way before the election, the Clintons are good people. Now, again, you can make the argument that that was pre-politics when he was just being a nice guy. But during the campaign, he was learning how dirty Hillary was and said she'd be in jail. What did he know? What did he know about Clintons? And then he didn't do it. He did not prosecute. But then maybe he told Jeff Sessions, arrest that bitch. And Jeff was like, ain't doing it. And then he said, you're out of here. And then Bill Barr got appointed. He said, go arrest that bitch. And Bill Barr said, ain't doing it. He said, look at James Comey of the FBI. He admitted that she committed a crime. Go arrest her. Ain't doing it. Can't make me. Swamp creatures. And the big one, Operation Warp Speed. Trump did Operation Warp Speed and pushed the Jim Jones juice to be accepted as an emergency use injectione. He pushed for that. Operation Warp Speed to get something that supposedly was made in just the last couple of months. Bullshit. It had been in the fucking works for 2 decades almost. He was lied to. And he fell for it. But I guess you don't get to that level without being surrounded by people who are only there for the money and for the power. They're not there to help America. If Washington is full of swamp rats, then all the politicians in there are fucking swamp rats. You bet, folks. Trump fucked up left and right. He knows better now. So what does he do? He fucking unzips his pants and puts it inside a bear trap and says, I'm going to obliterate the deep state. How are you going to do that? And I'm not just picking on Trump. I'm asking this question. If I was president and I campaigned on the promise that I'm going to get rid of the deep state, I'm going to split the CIA into a million pieces like JFK wanted. I'm going to destroy and take apart the FBI back to its 1920s level, and then say, if we're going to have a federal law enforcement agency, it needs to be structured and then run by decent, honorable people. Well, I need a school where there's decent and honorable people made. Someone go to the school where we've got intelligent, Constitution-minded law enforcement officers coming out of there. Schools are full of communists and communist professors and communist administrators and communist supporters and communist faculty and communist staff and communist books. Now, I do know this. If you want to make a United States Marine, it takes about 13 and a half weeks to take a red-blooded, Constitution-loving, kick-ass, patriotic American and turn them from a regular human into a Marine. How much longer would it take to take that same red-blooded, flag-waving, apple pie-eating, rock-hard, boner-strong American and turn him into a law enforcement officer for the federal government that cares about this country and not about some political communist fucking agenda? right? Draining the swamp, get rid of the FBI altogether. Is that possible? Right? It's a great question. How about the Department of Justice? How about the Attorney General's office? See, the Attorney General's office, folks, isn't one office with one fucking leather chair where Merrick Butthead Garlic Breath sits and shines out with his little fruitcake of an ass. No, the office, folks, is hundreds, if not thousands, of workers under the Attorney General. The Department of Justice is its own beast. The FBI is its own beast. The IRS is its own beast. The Department of Homeland Security is its own beast. Right? If I wanted to, how would I get rid of all that? And how would I replace that? How would I fix those problems? I'll tell you what I would do. Here's what I would do. I'd fucking dissolve them all. And I would start training people who want to work for the government, who are constitutionalists. And there would be fucking litmus tests, folks. And there would be lie detector tests. And then there would be serious repercussions for anyone who lied or started to act un-American or espoused un-American concepts. Right, do we need the FBI, or can every state in the union protect their own state? Criminals inside their state? Okay, you arrest them. You don't need federal laws. You got state laws for crime. If a criminal does a crime in one state and runs to another and says, neener, neener, you can't get me, that other state can arrest their dumbass and send them right back. We don't need federal government to deal with extradition state to state. We're all grown up. We understand that criminals need their asses kicked. Is Trump going to do that? There's my question. Is Trump going to do that? Can Trump do that? Will the deep state allow itself just to be abolished? I doubt it. And then you've got the whole question of the military itself. They're wanting to shut down how to make patriotic Americans into ass-kicking military. Look what Biden's doing with his idiot Lloyd the Loser Austin as Secretary of Defense. 3 years after Cerveza-Bug is started and had been proven to be a fucking sham, 3 years now, idiot's still wearing a fucking mask. Unbelievable. Are we done with questions, by the way? Are we done? By the way, Zark Muckerberg is laying off thousands, 10,000 more. Folks, he's already laid off, what, 10, 20,000 people at his Meta, his Facebook corporation? Nope, 10,000 more being added to that. Thanks, Zark Muckerberg. Way to go, pal. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. Oh, by the way, if you're feeling comfortable about banking again, today there was no great crash in the market. They kept everything pretty calm. Moody's has put 6 banks on downgrade watch. Guess where this leads, folks? When they are ready, when the powers that be decide, they're going to unplug the system and let these banks fail or cause them to crash. They put 6 more banks in the hopper. That's like having a 6-round magazine, and blam, 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 blam. They can just turn all those banks loose on the public and say, this one's down, 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 and cause more bank run, more collapse, more fear, more paranoia, and more wealth transfer. Remember, folks, wealth isn't destroyed. It's transferred. It's transferred. Someone takes a stock and they sell it. They bought for, or rather, they bought for $10 and they sell it for 1,000. And at that 1,000 price, it starts to fall all the way back down to 10. When it gets to the very bottom, they buy it back. Pennies on the dollar. They're the ones that get those dollars. The rich billionaire banker types. The investment types. They get these big dollars because they create a crisis where they make huge profits at the top, and then they let it crash to the bottom, and they buy back, and then they let it go back up. The process can take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. They don't care. As long as they get their billions of dollars and you get screwed in the arse. Folks, chance favors the prepared mind. Don't believe that wealth is destroyed. It is just transferred. Don't believe that our power as Americans has been destroyed by the government and their laws. It has merely been transferred. Our power has been transferred to the federal government, to the state governments, to local governments. Hell, your power has even been transferred to a fucking homeowners association. But it can be taken back. It's up to us. Chance favors the prepared mind is yours. Semper Fi, Godspeed. Are you prepared?